Гостин во денешното интервју за МИА е амбасадорот на Словенија Милан Предан. Амбасадоре Предан, најнапред да ви заблагодарам што прифативте да дадете интервју за Медиумската информативна агенција.
Благодарам да вие.
Минатата недела во Скопје беа полскиот председател и шефот на австриската дипломатија. Претходно во Скопје во прва посета дојде и премиерот на Холандија. Сите дадоа јасна и силна поддршка за почеток на преговори во декември. Словеничкиот државен секретар за Европа Довжан на состанокот на Советот за општи работи во Брисел изрази надеж дека ова прашање меѓу Скопје и Софија ќе се реши до крајот на годината и кажа дека овој процес мора да биде позитивен. Колку е реално да очекуваме старт на преговори до крај на годината под словеничко председавање со Европската Унија?
Well, we remain optimistic that could happen. In the recent years, I think there was never such a broad consensus within the EU member states that North Macedonia and Albania deserve and have to start negotiations already during the Slovenian presidency. As you know, it was one of the main goals of our presidency to keep the Western Balkans high on the EU agenda. And I think this broad consensus somehow proves that we have, to a large extent, succeeded to somehow, so to speak, to put EU back on a more decisive enlargement course. But yes, on the other hand, we have to be realistic. Time is getting very tight. We have now approximately 2 or 3 weeks until the 14th of December, when the General Affairs Council is going to have the meeting and where a formal decision on start of negotiation with both countries could be taken. And this is a very, very narrow time frame, particularly if we consider the current situation in both countries, in North Macedonia and Bulgaria. But well, we hope that the situation in this country is going to be clarified in the next days, in order to have to see if the government has a new majority in the parliament, and this is going to be very important. Now we have a prime minister who is about to resign, so it's very important to have a strong political government in place in order to be able to take heavy political decisions. And find a compromise with Sofia will take certainly many compromises and very demanding political decisions. And now we have, on the other side, we have a situation in Bulgaria where the good thing is that apparently a government will be formed after the third elections. We have now an elected president, but it's hard to expect that he himself, without a parliament which is about to be constituted, according to the latest information, somehow in next week, and without a government in place, it's very questionable if he will be ready to take political decisions by himself. So the situation is quite complicated. And in order to come to some compromises on this bilateral level, we need political governments on both sides. So it's a very big question if we will have that until the mid-December on the Bulgarian side. Now, I think it's still realistic to expect that we could at least come to at least to prepare the ground for the agreement, which might be taken also in January. I mean, you have waited so long, so I think it will not be a strategy to wait another few weeks. And the French presidency will certainly be willing to support such a decision in January, in the beginning of their of their presidency. We have now basically two issues to solve. One issue is the bilateral issue. So we are encouraging the EU government to really try to get to some agreement regarding the roadmap. As you know, expert groups of the foreign ministries have had several meetings discussing several points of this, how about the implementation of the bilateral agreement between two countries signed in 2017. Now those points are in discussion. The Bulgarian side has proposed how they see how these issues could be solved. The Macedonian side has already prepared their response, their comments on that. So now it would be very important that those two expert groups come together as soon as possible, and hopefully that would happen, and that should happen. So let's say in the next 10 days, that would give us a chance maybe to come to some solution when it comes to those bilateral issues. And then we have the other issue, and this is how to accommodate the Bulgarian demand that the EU should somehow, in some form, monitor the implementation of this bilateral agreement. Now, as you might know, there is no consensus in the EU that this should be placed into the negotiation framework. So it's not really likely that to happen. There were some other proposals how to accommodate this demand. Our presidency also works on some possible solutions, on some formulas that could be acceptable for all EU member countries and normally for Bulgaria. But no, at that point I cannot really go in details. But I'm convinced if there would be a solution will be found on this bilateral level, then it would be easier also to find a solution for this second issue.
Во Бугарија имаше избори, победничката коалиција најави нов пристап и имаше поумерени изјави во однос на прашањето меѓу Скопје и Софија. Но и покрај тоа што европските политичари ја повикуваат Софија да има поконструктивен пристап и да го тргне ветото, бугарските власти сега најавија дека остануваат на својата позиција кон Скопје, но очекуваат диалогот да даде конкретни резултати. Како го коментирате ова?
Well, we have had in these last days and weeks very, I would say, mixed signals from Sofia. For us, it is very encouraging the statements of the new potential Prime Minister, Mr. Petkov, who has made, I think, a very rational approach, saying history should not be the core of your bilateral dialogue. It should be only a part of it. Economy, education, culture, media. And I think this is the right approach. And that gives us also hope that there will be a political will on the Bulgarian side to come to agreement. Political will is crucial. If you don't want to make an agreement, then it's hard to persuade anybody to do it. We need, and first of all, for the solution and for the agreement, we need two of them. It's not just about one side. We need both sides be on board to show political will. So I believe that this changed a little bit other narrative that we are now hearing from the people in Sofia is giving us hope that we can come to a solution for those issues. Those questions that the Bulgarian side is putting on the table, they're not going to go away. I mean, they are certainly going to be always on the table. But we are always saying, let's start negotiations, and then we will have enough time to solve all other issues. Now, I think it's also somehow encouraging that in this last weeks, the issues of identity, language, history, which were really the most sensitive for the Macedonian side, are not in the forefront. Now we are talking about some other issues about the rights of the people with Bulgarian identity in North Macedonia, and I think those are issues that can be solved with political will on both sides much easier than issues which were really, very hard, and it would be very hard to find a solution for the issues of identity and language that your government could somehow defend in front of their own public. So this also gives us some basis for optimism.
Амбасадоре, морам да ве прашам како Словенија ги решаваше билатералните прашања со соседите за време на процесот на пристапување во ЕУ?
Well, we had a basically similar issue with one of our neighbors, who was conditioning the start of our negotiations, even with the change of our constitution. It was, for us, it was not an easy decision. You know, it's not easy to change your constitution because a neighbor wants that to happen. Although, frankly speaking, we would have to do this change when we would before we enter the EU. It was about the issue if foreigners can be owners of properties in Slovenia, which anyway would probably not stand the criteria of the EU if we would keep this in our constitution. But nevertheless, at that point, it was a very tough political decision. But we was always saying, you know, okay, this for us, going into the EU was a much more important goal for which we were ready to, let's say, sacrifice certain things. So we have had some of those experiences as you have now, although I have to say those issues were not so tough as those that you are dealing with. We had also, during negotiations, we have also some dialogue with some other neighbor, which was very critical towards our nuclear energy, nuclear plants, nuclear plant in Krško. But we have solved this with the dialogue. And what was very important, that both neighbors, it was in their political interests and their national interests that we enter the EU. So they showed political will for a dialogue, and this is crucial. As I said previously, you have to have political will to make an agreement. If you don't have this will, then it's hard to make it.
На самитот во Брдо се повтори јасната европска перспектива за регионот, меѓутоа не беа дадени конкретни рокови и временска рамка. Доколку ЕУ не испорача, односно не се отворат првите меѓувладени конференции со Северна Македонија и со Албанија, кредибилитетот на Унијата во регионот сериозно ќе биде нарушен. Дали тоа може би отвара простор за други влијанија во регионот да навлезат?
Yes, this was always we were also in the preparation of the Brdo summit. We have always emphasized this, the issue of if EU is not going to fill this space, then somebody else will. When I mentioned the Brdo summit, EU Western Balkans, I must say that we were trying to bring together everybody in the EU that could really help to solve this, as well, this bilateral issue between North Macedonia and Bulgaria. Everybody was there. All the leaders of the EU member countries. It was for the first time that all the leaders were present at such summits, because in some previous summits, some countries have had some restraints. I'm speaking about countries which did not yet recognize the independence of Kosovo. This time, everybody was there. And there were a lot of discussion, a lot of dialogue. The Bulgarian president was there. Your prime minister was there. We have done everything what we could, really we didn't have the illusion that we can in one summit solve all the issues, but we were trying to create an atmosphere that could then lead to some solutions. Unfortunately, we didn't, at least at this part, we did not succeed. The other part that we did not succeed to persuade other member countries to set some time frame for the enlargement. We have proposed 2030 as a final date when all the countries of the West of Balkans should enter the EU. But what we have succeeded was that, and maybe for somebody this was maybe not so crucial, but it was. We have succeeded to put the very word enlargement into the final declaration. You have to know that prior to the summit, there were quite some reluctance among some member states to mention this word. So we have succeeded to do that. We have succeeded to come to agreement that those summits are going to be every year. The next one is going to be under the Czech presidency in autumn 2022. We have put on the table the very extensive financial support for the region, 9 billion euro for investments, approximately 30 billion euro with all the loans. So it's a very substantial financial support for the region. And this was all some sort of, that has confirmed that there is a genuine interest of the EU not to leave the region outside. Knowing, again, that, as you have said in the beginning, that this opens the door for some other players in the region. And their interest is legitimate, as long as it's not, if they are not pushing their interests in some violent, undemocratic way. If they do it with economic influence, with financing, whatever, this is legitimate. But they will only use our own weakness if this will happen in the beginning. And I think this region deserves a clear European perspective. And again, I just hope that next year, and this time, I will not have to talk about how important the European perspective is, but that we would be able to say the European perspective is already here. So you are negotiating, and I'm almost sure that this is going to happen. If not now, really now in December, I believe this is must happen in January. Maybe just to mention also that we also, as a presidency, really trying very hard that the two candidate countries which are already negotiating, Serbia and Montenegro, would open at least some new chapters. You know that in the last, they didn't open any new chapters in the last 2 years. Those negotiations are already going on very long. And I also hope that North Macedonia and Albania would be able to conclude their negotiations faster as it looks now.
Да, Северна Македонија веќе е подготвена, бидејќи доста од законодавството е имплементирано од законодавството на ЕУ во нашето законодавство.
Yeah, sure. people should know that to a large extent, North Macedonia is already integrating itself in the EU. As you said, accepting the EU legislation. I think the recent COVID crisis has shown that you are a part of European Union with all the assistance that came in terms of financial resources for the medicine equipment, in terms of vaccines. It is true that at the beginning of the corona crisis, EU has to do a lot with it, deal with their own problems. So it may be some other countries outside EU have reacted, assisting in vaccines, and that maybe created impression in here in the public that they were basically helping even more than the EU, but which is basically not true. I mean, if we now compare how much vaccines your country has received from the EU countries, from the EU, and compared to some others, you will see that this is really a huge difference. And certainly the EU has not left North Macedonia and the whole region behind.
Спроведувањето на реформите, освен решавањето на прашањето со Бугарија, е исто така клучно во процесот на пристапување во ЕУ. Борбата против корупцијата често се споменува како област на која што треба повеќе да се работи. На кои реформи властите треба да посветат поголемо внимание?
Well, you have mentioned it. I think this is one of the crucial things. Fight against corruption, because, you know, corruption destroys the society. And successful fight against corruption means being more attractive to foreign investments. It means new working places, means more welfare. So this is where everything begins. Sometimes, if we observe the discussions on this issue here in this country now, you have a feeling that people think that corruption has a party color. So always the other guys are corrupt. Corruption has no party color. And corruption has many faces, and it starts with each individual who believes, for example, that with a bribe, with giving a bribe or taking a bribe, will bring some benefit to him, to his family, to his friends. And that's why corruption is not so easy to fight. It's a very tough issue. And besides the state institutions who are in charge and should be in charge in fighting the corruption, a very important role is the role of the media. I think they can really, by exposing not just high-level corruption cases, but corruption on all levels, they can really bring great benefit to this fight, you know, because if you are publicly exposed, this is for everybody could be a very a good argument to say, well, next time I'm going to be more cautious, you know, and that's why I really emphasize very much the role of the media, and normally the independent judiciary, and this is another reform that I think is very important. And maybe the third issue that I would say would be very important, it would be the reforms related also to the environment. I think Macedonia, your country, has such a beautiful nature, and you should try to keep it, you know. And this is Slovenia is very proud to be officially declared as the cleanest state in the world, you know. But we know that it's partially a matter of mentality, for sure. But it's also a combination of awareness campaigns, sanctions, And this is, I think, something that also the EU country should have to work on, to make, besides all the awareness campaigns, provide infrastructure that the people are really, infrastructure is important. If you don't have anything to put your garbage in, then you know what happens. So, and sanctions. So the people are really, sanctioned if they do harm to the environment. And this, so firsthand, I would say this is the third item that comes to my mind when we talk about reforms. And maybe, just to add, all those reforms that we are talking about, because sometimes I have a feeling people think that they are doing this reform because of the EU. They're doing it for yourself. It's people who live here. They should have the interest that those reforms go on, regardless of what the EU say. EU can push those reforms. I know if I compare this with the situation in Slovenia, we have started our reforms primarily because of us, not because somebody from Brussels has told us you should do that, And you should have here the same attitude. You are doing your reforms for yourself, and then the question: when would you start the negotiations, and when will you conclude the negotiations? Is getting a little less important. When we talk about EU accession, the road to the goal is equally important than the goal. That means along this way, the country has to change for the better.
Амбасадоре Предан, пред да влезете во дипломатијата, вие бевте и долгогодишен новинар. Па оттука и моето следно прашање. Како ја оценувате сегашната ситуација со Словеничката телеграфска агенција? Вработените таму беа оставени 300 дена без примања. Пред неколку дена им беше извршена првата уплата со што беше избегнат банкротот на агенцијата. Како се тоа влијае на независноста на агенцијата?
Yes, it's true. I was for 25 years I was a journalist, and for a decade I was head of the second largest Slovenian newspaper. Now, about STR, I have, as an editor-in-chief, I always have a very positive experience with STR. Now, I followed the situation as you did to media. So I don't really have a clear insight. What were all the reasons for all those tensions between the government and the agency? Although it's a little bit surprising to me that after the previous director resigned, a new one came. This was only 1 month ago. In 1 week, and the agreement with the government was signed. So I don't know really what changed. What changed meanwhile? How was it possible to make an agreement just 1 week after the previous director has resigned? The agency is certainly not going to go bankrupt. I think they are already discussing how to cover how to pay all the debts for the 2021. They are already negotiating the contract for 2022. It also has to be added that the agency is making approximately half of their revenues on the market, so approximately 1/2 is coming from the state, and so I'm not really worried about the future of the Slovenian. It was I understand it was not an easy time for them, but I think this issue is going to be solved. And I think nobody should also be very worried about the media freedom in Slovenia. You can be worried about the media freedom in one country when you have all the main media pro-governmental. So we have, I would say, just the opposite situation in Slovenia. that the majority of media, all the main medias, including the national television, private, the greatest private television, all the 3 major daily newspapers, cannot be considered as government friendly, to put it like this way. So this shows that media freedom is not in danger. I was first-hand experienced political pressures in different periods when I was leading a newspaper as chief editor and then also as a general manager. There were periods when these pressures were more explicit. There were periods when these pressures were more hidden, but they were always there. Politics always tend to have an influence on media. And the only answer on that is professionalism. It's not political activism. I mean, you should be professional, and then you should not care so much what the politicians think about your work. If you are convinced that you are doing your job properly, then why be so concerned if a politician has his opinion on what you are doing, you know? And if journalists have the right and obligation to be critical to the government, to the politicians, you know, I mean, I would say the politicians has as well the right to be critical towards media. And not every critic that comes from the politics is an attack on the independent media. And sometimes I have the feeling that this is exactly what is now happening, you know. When a politician says something, you know, about the media, then this is right away attack. We have witnessed all that, you know. I was journalist already in the former Yugoslavia. You know how it was there. It was much easier, much tougher to work as a journalist if you wanted to do it with your own head. And I always say, professional, what it means to be professional, this is a very simple sentence. Facts are sacred, comment is free. Which means, but now we have many times opposite situation that some of my former colleagues are writing their comments on distorted facts. And this is not professional. And so I hope that STR is not going to be an issue in the forthcoming period anymore, and that we will have less political activism and more professionalism in our journalism.
Амбасадоре Придан, како ги оценувате досегашните билатерални односи меѓу Словенија и Северна Македонија? Дали има простор за зајакнување на економската соработка меѓу двете земји?
Well, we don't have, I would say, not one open issue in our bilateral relations. When it comes to the political, we were always, basically, we never had in our history of our independent states, we didn't have, I don't think, any open issue, any dispute, and this is quite rare, you know. And I think this proves that we really have excellent relations. As regards to economic cooperation, because of the COVID, the trade exchange went slightly down. I think it was somehow decrease of approximately 6% in 2020 in comparison with the 2019. But we don't have figures for 2021 yet. But it is also true that for obvious reasons, some plans for new investments that our companies have were somehow now not really stopped, but slowed down. But our companies which are here, and there are many, are generally satisfied with the business environment. And if rule of law is going to be further improved, they're going to be even more satisfied. As you know, we are very strong when it comes to the financial sector in your country. Our Nova Ljubljanska Banka is one of the largest and most successful banks in your country. Our assurance companies are practically having a monopoly when it comes to the pension funds, which means that people here are trusting Slovenian brands. It's important that we have some very successful factories here, which are located in the regions where there is a great need for working places. So we expect that when you start your negotiations, the interest for new investments is going even to increase. It's interesting to see that we have expected that the NATO membership will already increase the interest, but this was, I would say, also the consequence of the COVID crisis, because you formally entered NATO just in the middle of the crisis, so it was not so publicized. And I think also NATO membership is a license for safety, for security. It means also security of investments. So I think in combination, NATO membership and the EU accession negotiations, that will certainly increase also the interest of our companies to further invest in Slovenia. And we would also like to have more Macedonian investments in Slovenia, which are some, but they could be more.
Yes. Исто така има голем интерес за младите од земјата да студираат во Словенија. Дали има можности да се зголеми квотата за наши студенти да студираат таму? Дали знаете сега колку студенти студираат во Словенија од Северна Македонија? За кои факултети најмногу се интересираат нашите студенти таму?
We don't have the exact figures for this year, which have started in October. In last year, officially, we have basically two figures. One was that there were over 1,300 students from North Macedonia in Slovenia in the previous study year. Now, some official figures say there were approximately 200 less. I don't know why this difference, but they are one of the largest group of foreign students in Slovenia, and it's because of they don't have to pay scholarships. I think for the most young Macedonians, it's much more, if they want to study in the EU, it's certainly more attractive to do it in Slovenia than, for example, when there is not such a huge language barrier, than to do it in maybe some other Western European countries. I must say that our faculties like very much your students. They are mostly very motivated, dedicated, adjustable. They learn the language very fast. So we will certainly be interested to have even more students, from your country in Slovenia. On the other hand, we would also wish that at least some of them return to your country, and because this is the other problem, that not many return. But I always say it's maybe much more likely to return from Slovenia than to return from Germany or maybe Switzerland or UK, for example. We have some examples. We are trying to encourage our companies who are based here in North Macedonia to already, while they are studying in Slovenia, approach those good students and maybe motivate them to go back to Macedonia and work for the Slovenian companies, because they know the language, they know both languages. We have some examples that this actually happened. For example, the head of Perutnina Ptuj, which is really one of the most top brands for chicken meat here. He studied in my hometown Maribor. I have met him there, and I didn't even know that he is now back in Macedonia. And they just engaged him, saying, "Are you willing to go back to Macedonia and work for us?" He said, "Yes." So I think this is a formula when both sides can it's a so-called win-win situation. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen so often. So we have here somehow mixed feeling. We are interested to have more students from Macedonia because they are, as I said, very well received on our faculties. And what is more important, they are usually choosing the studies where we are lacking people, medicine, some natural sciences. There are not so many who would study some other issues. So this is again some sort of a benefit that we have from the students from North Macedonia, that they are really choosing studies where we need where there is a need on the labor market. For example, particularly on the area of medicine, because what happens? Many of our doctors go to work to Austria and Germany, so then we are really keen to get young doctors from the region. That's how it goes.
Yes, амбасадоре Предан, за крај, како Словенија се справува сега со новиот бран на COVID-19? Во вашата земја имаше и масовни демонстрации против рестриктивните мерки за справување со пандемијата. Може ли да направите една паралела со справувањето со COVID-19 во Словенија и тука во Северна Македонија?
Well, we have to admit the situation in Slovenia with COVID is not too good. We have still a very high level of infected people. Now, in the last months, the figures goes around between 35 and 45% of the tested people who are infected, which is extremely high. Hospitals are filled with people, also with young people. At this stage, the hospitals still manage with big difficulties to manage all this inflow of new. Why is it so? People, we despite having enough vaccines, we still have not enough people get vaccinated. But this is not a Slovenia. This is a general problem in I would say in Western Europe, particularly in some countries. You mentioned protests. Yeah, we had some protests. They were not so violent as in some other countries. There is a very strong anti-vaccination movement, and we have now made the measures even more strict as they were. We did not decide to go into the lockdown like, for example, Austria did. Now I think Slovak Republic is going to do the same. We did not decide to do it. Probably we will not because of the economy. But generally, I would say the situation, at least when we look at the figures, it's in North Macedonia is better than in Slovenia at the moment. And the most crucial thing is the health system. You know, if the health system is going to be able to accommodate all those needs, then we can expect that the consequences of people not wanting to be vaccinated are not going to be so harsh. Now, at the moment, it seems that the number of infected is somehow stabilizing, but still on a very high level. And generally, I would say we are, our societies, including Slovenian one and the Western societies, are somehow, I would say, victims of this individualism, which is now in. So when everybody says, I am the most important to myself. I will never forget a statement from one of the protesters in Ljubljana when there were protests against COVID measures, and he was saying, like, for me, freedom is more important than health. Then you ask yourself, what kind of logic is that? My freedom is more important than your health. So this is something that I think we have, after all those crises are going to be over, we will have maybe also to rethink ourselves, what is, how we see ourselves. Everybody is really the center of the universe, and not showing enough solidarity to the others, that this simple truth that my rights are always limited with the rights of the other one. So this is going to be, I think, after this everything is over, hopefully it will be over, we will have a good basis for this kind of discussions.
Амбасадоре Придан, ви благодарам за интервјута за Медиумската информативна агенција.
Се надевам дека ќе се ова нешто логично.